Alright, another channel news video. I found out that this microphone is directional, so if I aim it toward me it's good, if I aim it away it's bad. Okay, but I'd rather hold it than have it clipped somewhere. Okay, so two things I forgot to mention yesterday, maybe three things. Yeah, so I'm just doing another video. I'm going to go over one of the most asked questions first. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get, other than how do you make them thin? How do you get long flakes so you can make the arrowheads thin? That sort of thing. The other big question is, where do you get rocks and stuff? So I'll talk about that. And I got that specifically as a question either yesterday or the day before. So there's enough new people asking. So yeah, introductions. My name is Patrick. It's not Jack. The channel name is Jack Crafty. My name is Patrick. I have over 1,900 videos. You can do a search by typing in Jack Crafty and whatever you're looking for. I might have a video on the topic. I've been doing this since 2011. I've been on YouTube since 2007. Okay. The most frequently asked question is, where do I get rocks? The best place, by far, number one, never fails to get, it will never fail for you. How do I put this? It will never be a failure to get rocks if you go to a Knapping. You will always get at least some rocks, even if you have to pick through the trash. If you go to a Knapping. Now you can buy rocks at Knappings, but the best thing to do is to make contacts with people who have lots of rocks. Now they may sell it to you, they may give it to you, they may want you to come pick it up because they don't want to pay shipping. You may have to pay shipping in advance. You may have to make all kinds of arrangements to get the rock, but that's number one, the best way. Finding it on your own is not the best way. Going to private property to pick up rocks and explore the areas where there's rocks is not the best way. And looking on Google Maps for gravel beds and stuff is not the best way. The best way is to go to a Knapping. That's why in a lot of my videos in the comments section I put a list of Knappings. Now, why is it the best way? Because you have people there that know what they're doing. Now, if you're fortunate enough, there are exceptions, if you're fortunate enough to be on private property where the landowner or your buddies that are going with you know what they're doing when it comes to rocks, then that is an exception. And if the property has good rocks to knap. So the private property can be one of the best or the best option if many conditions are met. The people know what they're doing, the rocks are good to knap, you have access to a whole bunch of different varieties to gain experience. If all that kind of stuff is actually at a Knapping, and you will find that you can also get instruction at a Knapping. Now, if there's a private property thing going on where they give instructions for free too, then that's the exception. Yeah, if a landowner is sitting on literally hundreds of tons of rocks, that's more than you'll find at a Knapping. Or even, maybe 10 tons of rocks. Doesn't have to be hundreds of tons. Then that would be the exception. But how many exceptions have I witnessed since I've been doing this? Maybe two out of dozens and dozens of Knappings that I've either heard about, gone to, or watched the videos of. Okay? Nothing compares to a Knapping. Unless there are certain very special exceptions. Okay? The next best thing, other than private property, as I mentioned, is landscape supply yards that actually carry knappable stone. They usually carry it in large quantities of a certain size of gravel. Now in Texas they call it bull gravel, and you see piles of it of different sizes, and it's mostly agates and cherts. Some of it is not knappable, but most of it is, especially if you heat treat it. So I've been recommending landscape supply yards for as long as I can remember, since 2011, but people still do not catch on to the idea that you can go to a landscape supply, not the ones that sells plants and mulch and decorations for Halloween and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the type of place, the type of yard that supplies professionals and homeowners with stuff like that, landscape stones like that, large boulders, small pea gravel, and various other fill to create landscapes. Because a lot of these things, like if you want to make steps, you need to fill underneath the rocks with something, a place where a professional would be at home buying landscape materials, not just shrubberies and trees and flowers and stuff. That is part of it, but I'm talking about the ones that carry rocks, big rocks, and a variety of rocks. Okay? But people still won't catch on. I'll mention that until I'm blue in the face, and not no one. There are people that do it. Hardly anyone takes the time to go look. Now, it's true that it's a mixed bag. A lot of landscapers don't carry that kind of stone. But if you look around in your area and you see maybe a restaurant or two, or a hotel, or some business with landscaping that has flint and chert in it, where did they get it? They must have got it from a landscape supply somewhere. And not too far away, because it's ridiculous to buy landscape stone from 100, 300, 400 miles away. It should be local, right? Okay. So you can either ask where they got the landscape stone if you are, the type of person that likes to ask questions. Personally, I don't like to go up to the restaurant people and say, where did you get the landscape stone? I'll just look around in the phone book, online, of course. I'll just type in landscape supply, and then it'll show you little red balloons where all the landscape supplies are, and I'll drive to each one. Okay, be prepared to drive a lot. Okay, so I mentioned 1, 2, 3. The best place is Knappings, and then private property, and then landscape supply yards. And the biggest reason why landscape supply yards are really, really good is because the rock is very cheap. You can usually get, like I used to get 80 pounds or a 5-gallon bucket full for $10 to $15 depending on the rock. And it was all gravel, bull gravel, and not very easy to knap. But that's 80 pounds. It took me a whole week to knap that. For 10 or 15 bucks is pretty good. Now, these days the price has probably doubled since then for small quantities. But you can buy big quantities too. Much cheaper per pound if you have the money. And it's very easy to save up money if you don't spend a lot of gas looking for stone. Now, you may say, well, the Knapping is like across the country. I can't go. It's too much money. Yeah, that can be a problem. So what you do in that case is you save up for it if you already know it's going to come. If you already know it's going to be there next year, save up the money. Yeah. I've known people that actually moved to be closer to Knappings and to rocks. They're retired. They're not sure where they want to live. They get into Flintknapping and the light bulb goes off. I know where I want to live now. I want to live where they have lots of Knappings and where they have lots of good rocks. Yeah. So that's what they do. Now, I always recommend that at the drop of a hat, you should be willing to travel up to 4 to 6 hours each way. Oops, the wind is blowing the camera. Hold on. Goodness. It got very windy all of a sudden. So yeah, be willing to, at the drop of a hat, drive 4 to 6 hours each way to get rocks. Okay? I did that. As soon as I made that commitment, I got lots of rocks. Okay? You can either go to somebody's house that has lots of rocks. Maybe they're getting out of flint knapping. That's very common. Some guys, they start when they're 65 and now they're 75 and they can't knap anymore, so they give away all their rocks. There might be one of those guys near you. I got literally 600 pounds of rock from a guy like that because he was moving. Yeah, and it helped me a lot. Of course, 80% of that needed to be heat treated, but when I learned heat treating, it was good. All right, so let me start using my notes because I'm all over the place. As far as my notes go, I'm not following my notes. Okay, go to Knappings. Let's see. There are other sources for rocks, okay? I named 3 or 4. You can go to department stores like Hobby Lobby, okay? They have agate slabs. Okay, I don't know what section of the store they have those in. I think it's in the aquarium section. But anyway, they got slabs of different sizes. Now, not all of those are nappable, but they can be napped usually if you heat treat those. I've tried napping those agate slabs raw and they don't nap. You've got to heat treat those, and you've got to heat treat them at the highest temperatures possible. Most of those start to respond at 500 degrees, but some of them need 600 degrees Fahrenheit. 500 degrees Fahrenheit is around the minimum, and a lot of those slabs come from Indonesia somewhere, so it's I don't know the kind of rock that is. It's an agate of some sort, or they're agates of some sort, but I don't know the exact composition of those. But I do have experience in asking people how they nap those, and most of them are heating those at 500 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter for 4 hours or more. But yeah, you can get those at Hobby Lobby, and they're not that expensive. You can also get stained glass sheets at Hobby Lobby and nap glass, but it's thin sheets, so you can only make little arrowheads. But that's something to consider if you got a Hobby Lobby down the street. Okay? You can go to Walmart and buy porcelain plates and cups and experiment with them. You know, you can even break up, or if you break a mug or something, high-grade porcelain, and you can nap the bottom of that, or you can nap, of course, bottle bottoms. If you don't have access to people's trash, or I say people's, but you know, some people are good at dumpster diving, and you can find bottles in dumpsters. If you don't want to do any of that, or if you can't, or if it's not, people just don't throw away trash in that way. Like here in Vermont, there's a glass recycling and everyone throws their glass there. You can buy bottled water, it's very cheap, in glass containers in either blue or green. Glass bottles in blue or green. Those nap very well. The clear bottles don't nap as well, in my experience, and clear is more hazardous. So I don't recommend clear glass. The darker the glass, the better. Okay? Foreign sources for slabs, you can find them on Facebook a lot of times. International foreign sources for slabs of different materials. And some of those are nappable. Okay? I've never ordered from any of those guys, but I have seen people that did. and it's a mixed bag. Some of the stuff can be heat treated and nap well. Some of that stuff is nappable in the raw state, but it's a mixed bag, so you're going to have maybe at least 50% waste, I think, because you can't do anything with it. It just looks nice, unless you just want to decorate your aquariums or something with it. I mean, you can always use it for something. But as far as napping goes, I don't have any good suggestions for this stuff that you get from Indonesia and places like that, or India. Okay, you can also buy those prefabricated arrowheads made of jasper from India and re-nap those. You can re-nap these tourist shop arrowheads in many cases, and they used to be real cheap, but now they're getting expensive. They're used for pendants and stuff. You can re-nap those into better looking arrowheads, and I've got a video where I did that at least once. I have at least one video where I did that. Okay, now I touched on this briefly, but heat treating is very important. Once you learn how to heat treat, you can double your supply easily. If you've been collecting rocks from landscape supply yards or nap-ins or trash from other nappers or discards from other nappers or on your own property or someone else's property that just doesn't nap that well, you can heat treat those in many cases and double your supply. I doubled my supply basically overnight when I learned how to heat treat. I had a bunch of rock that was all bull gravel that I couldn't nap well, but with heat treatment, it solved a lot of problems. Okay? Learn how to heat treat. Ah, yes. But I seen you heat treat and you're not using sand, so I can't learn from you. You don't need sand in the turkey roaster to heat treat. Well, how do I know? I don't know. Okay. Oh, and if you're loaded with money, you can buy a kiln. Yeah, and that will do everything for you as far as ramping up heat, maintaining heat for a certain number of hours, and then turn it off and let it cool down by itself. It does everything. It's automated. Some of these kilns, well, I think all of the kilns are automated. Right? It's usually used for pottery, so there can't be any shenanigans with the technology. There's got to be very precise, and it's got to work. So I recommend, if you can do it, to get a kiln instead of making your own heat treating DIY setup. Now, you can heat treat in your kitchen oven, the same as you can in the turkey roaster, and you don't need sand. You don't need sand in the kiln. You don't need sand in the turkey roaster. You don't need sand in the oven. You can even heat treat in a barbecue grill, either wood or gas or charcoal, and you don't need sand. Okay? How do I know you don't need sand? I don't know. How do I know that people insist on using sand? Because there are very insistent people out there that think that they have to use it. Okay, fine. But that's not my advice. I used sand. I did use it when I first started. And why did I stop using it? Because it wasted time. Lots of time. Yeah. Well, you talk about time a lot, but you can't get anything done on time. Yeah, I know. I can't get things done on time because I spend too much time doing stupid stuff. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I don't get stuff done on time. I'm always trying to save time because there's so much to do. And if it takes forever to do all those things, then everything gets backed up. You know the story. Besides, with symptoms of ADHD, you lose track of what time is. You have time blindness. I have time blindness sometimes. Yeah, it won't take me that long to do it. 3 weeks later. I didn't do that, did I? It was only going to take me an afternoon or less, maybe 2 hours. Turns out that it takes 2 hours for prep well, 2 hours to find the project again, because I'm looking through my emails and looking through my notes, and where was that? I know it was there. 2 hours later, dang, I found it. Okay, now let's prep for this stuff. Let's get everything together. Oh, I gotta go buy this. I go to the store, come back, and set everything up, and then, oh, I gotta fix dinner. All right, and then I come back. Okay, everything's set up. Another 2 hours passed. Okay, let's see. Let's get this thing done. Am I ready? It's ready. Let's do it. Wait a minute. I gotta wing it, don't I? Because I haven't practiced this yet. No, I didn't practice doing this. I gotta do this without practice first time. Okay, I'll try doing it and mess up. All right, let's do some practice and practice. So I practice on it. I get better. I can do it now, but it's time for bed. Okay, that's how a 2 hour project becomes the whole day, and then it's time for bed. Okay, but I get blind to that, so I'm thinking it's only going to take a couple hours. No, especially some of the things I agree to. Some of the things I agree to have taken me many hours when I thought it was only going to take me half a day. It's taken me weeks for some things. Okay, I'm ranting right now and I'm complaining. Yeah, I know. But you know how it goes. I hope you know how it goes. Hope I'm not the only one. Okay, get back to our regularly scheduled programming. Getting back to it. You can get fine-grained porcelain and knap that. Where do you get fine grade, not fine grain, although that does apply too. Fine grade porcelain, where do you get it? Well, if you're lucky enough, you can get broken electrical insulators made from that high grade porcelain. Electrical insulators are a very good source. Not those glass insulator things that they're old-timey things. No, these ceramic insulators are big. They're industrial grade ceramic insulators. They're high grade porcelain that can be knapped, as an example. But you can buy porcelain at the store. You know, sometimes they have a sale on just generic cups or whatever. You can break them apart and test them out. Some of them are knappable. I'm not talking about toilet tank porcelain or porcelain tiles for wall tiles. Floor tiles, yes. Wall tiles are a whole different category and different ball game. They're usually more porous, lower quality, and lightweight. So you can mount them on a wall without them slipping down, as an example. Okay? Floor tile can be heavy and high grade. In fact, it's best that the floor tile is made that way because it has to withstand all the stuff a floor has to withstand. Okay? But high-grade porcelain can also be manufactured by people in their garage with a kiln, and they are doing it. On Facebook, there's at least one guy who's been doing prefabricated preforms made of porcelain. And there are other people that are catching on to the idea on YouTube and elsewhere. Okay, but the first place I saw prefabricated slabs made of high-grade porcelain of different colors and different patterns was on Facebook. Okay? Facebook is one of those places that's a good choice to go look. It should be on the list of the top, let's say 5. Knap-ins, landscape supply yards, private property with knowledgeable people, department stores, hardware stores, and Facebook. Okay. Now, what about just exploring? I'm reminded of Jay's videos. I'm not making fun of Jay's videos, but it's funny. I go in the comment sections. This is Wilderness Quest Outdoors. I think that's his name on the channel, or that used to be his name. He's an excellent source for knowing all there is to know about going out and exploring and finding rocks. Excellent videos on that subject. What I think is funny is I look in the comment section and people are still quite lost when it comes to what do I look for? How do they look? What do I do with them? How do I carry them out of there? How do I know they're going to be good? Just go there, explore. If you see some gravel, bring a little hammer. Okay, before you go there, get a little hammer. Buy it at the Harbor Freight for like $4 or whatever. Just a little one, and then tap on the stones when you get out to the park or whatever. As long as it's public and no restrictions on gathering the rocks from the river. Tap on the stone, and if it chips like a piece of chert or flint, you're good to go, right? You can test all kinds of stuff. Just out there, people are going to go, what's the guy doing tapping on rocks? It's a fairly common sight to see because there are other people who collect rocks that do the same thing, not just flint nappers. So don't worry about that part. Unless you can't be doing it. It'll say, or you just look up the ordinances of the town or whatever. To be safe, don't do it, but a lot of times you can go and pick up rocks, okay? I should put a disclaimer on that to make sure you research that before, because if it's not private property, you need to do the research to make sure you can collect from that area, okay? It is serious business. But anyway, just bring a little hammer and tap on it. And don't be squeamish about testing out in the field. And don't... people are less squeamish about asking questions. How do I do this, had that? Just go and do it. They seem to be shy about doing it, but they can ask a billion questions. Just go out and test it. And don't get sad if nothing you find works. Okay? Because most of the time, it's not going to work. Okay? It's going to look good. And you might say, ooh, I also found a little artifact. Someone must have worked it. Maybe, maybe not. 90% chance is, the 90% chance is it's not worked by a human. It's what they call a geofact. Geologically produced item that looks like somebody made it. Okay? There are such things. And it's funny to see that people don't know that. Also, they don't know that there's rocks that look like a human made it, and they don't know to test the rocks that they see. They just ask a billion questions, and they assume a billion things. Okay. Where was I? I can never follow these notes. If you want to know how good floor tile is, I got a separate note here. It's like a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best nappable materials. So, if you've been napping floor tile, that grade of nappability is halfway between bad and good. Bad is a 1, good, really good is a 10. Okay? I will nap anything on that scale. And yeah, there are things that can be chipped, that can be made into something like a tool, but I rate it as a 0. I won't nap that. But it can still be napped. It's kind of not on this. It's kind of on the scale, but not. A 0 is kind of on the scale, but I don't nap those. So from 0 to 10, let's say. Some people will insist on napping the 0s. That's okay. I'll nap the 1s. Sometimes. I used to be enthusiastic about napping the 1, 2s, and 3s for people at nap-ins, but I learned my lesson. Because I go home and I cry over my tools that are now all ruined. Okay? Not literally, but you know what I mean. Because I don't like revamping or making tools. Yeah, that's why. It's not because I beat up the tools, because I do that all the time. It's because I don't like making new ones. That's one reason why I don't sell tools. I don't sell tools. I try not to. Some people have begged me and begged me. Okay, fine. But that's the only time I'll do it. All right, be willing to travel. Yep. Georgetown flint is a mixed bag. Okay, I have that as a separate note because it's such a big issue. Yeah, Georgetown flint is a big question mark. And for you to find the best Georgetown flint, it's going to take a lot of time. Okay, so a lot of people recommend Georgetown flint as the ultimate because there's a lot of it, and it's good for beginners and advanced nappers. It can be heat treated or not. It's very versatile. It's got that basic gray color. You can see the flake scars. You can see the edges. It shows up on any photo or any video, and you can hunt with it. It's durable, yada, yada, yada. But it's a very mixed bag, and you'll be disappointed many times. I've been disappointed more times with Georgetown than any other rock that I've ever tried to nap, except Rhyolite, I think. Yeah. I've had more misery with that particular stone, even worse than bull gravel, because it's the expectation that you're going to have something good, and then it ends up being a waste because you break it all. Okay? So just be aware. That's just a FYI. Okay? Yeah, be willing to travel. But keep track of how much it costs you. And I actually did this back in the day for traveling. It used to cost me $10 an hour to travel in my van. $10 worth of gas per hour. It's around $12 now, something like that. And when the gas prices go up, that price goes up. So right now it's about $12 an hour for me to travel in my van. I think I get between 23 and 25 miles a gallon on a good day. It's usually around 22 miles per gallon, I'm thinking. Anyway, calculate that for your vehicle so you know how much you're spending on gas, and you'll be very surprised that you're going to be spending hundreds of dollars on rock that you find on the side of the road, as an example, which is not that great, compared to rock you could buy from a good rock seller for less. You're going to be surprised how much you actually spend on gas. Now, if you have a free gas card, yeah, I would use that to my utmost advantage. I don't know what, there's some jobs that allow you to travel quite a bit, and they have, as long as you don't overdo it, you can use the gas card. I would take advantage of that. I know a guy that went to different job sites and would explore for rock around his job sites, and sure enough, there'd be nappable rocks sometimes at the different job sites. And especially if there's excavation, that's the best rock to get. Stuff that's been mined out of the ground below the frost line. Okay, you can find rocks in rivers, in road cuts, construction sites, farms. Sometimes farms will have a big stack of gravel that they've pushed out or removed from their croplands and just stashed it somewhere. You can look through there. Sometimes there's nappable rocks and that kind of stuff. Road cuts, yeah. Road cuts are the worst place nowadays. It used to be really good, but now they've been picked over pretty much by rock hounds, people that are looking on Google Maps, and just hobby nappers that travel a lot. Okay. All right, what else? Heat treating. How do you heat treat? I've got videos on heat treating. Yeah. I've got videos on heat treating. Just type in Jack Crafty heat treat. Jack Crafty heat treat. And it'll come up with 3 or 4 videos. You can watch them all. Yeah, I already went over that. Okay. When you heat treat, make sure you heat treat flakes first. And don't do all of your stuff all at once. Knock off some flakes, stick them in there. Now, scientific experiments, I wrote this down somewhere. There have been scientific experiments and scientific explanations for performing heat treat and why it works for making it more knappable, making the stone more knappable. But they don't publish the results because most of it's buried in geological articles and stuff. And it only interests very specialized professions. Okay, but there are studies on it, and we do know why it naps easier. It's just hard for us to get the information and to explain it clearly. But it has to do with several different factors. The heat does different things with different rocks, but the end result is nappability increases with each one of these different kinds of rocks for different reasons within the chemical and molecular structure of the rocks. Okay, so one explanation for heat treat is not going to explain all the reasons why heat treat works, because it's, like I said, it works differently with different kinds of stone. But for the most part, and as a general statement, heat treating is sufficient at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. This is with flakes. With thicker materials, a flake is 1/4 inch thick or less. For each 1/4 inch, now this is my rule, for each 1/4 inch you increase the time of heat treat by 1 hour. So if it's a 1/2 inch, you heat treat it for 2 hours. If 3/4 for 3 hours, and 1 inch for 4 hours. I don't heat treat anything thicker than 1 inch unless I know it's not going to blow up, because there's stresses that happen because of the differences in the way the heat dissipates and enters the stone. It needs to be consistent as much as possible. Okay, the heat needs to penetrate or dissipate in an even manner, or you're going to get internal stresses and even cracks and pops and all kinds of weird stuff. Okay? So the moral of that story is it doesn't take that long and doesn't take that much heat to heat treat. Every temperature that I mentioned is going to be Fahrenheit. Okay? I've had confusion where someone asked me heat treat values a while ago, and I didn't specify Fahrenheit, and he was doing everything in Celsius and ruining all of his good stuff. Yeah, that was heartbreaking. So everything that I say is, in terms of temperatures, is going to be Fahrenheit. Okay. Scientific studies have determined that 400 degrees for 1 hour is sufficient for flakes of most materials for different reasons. Sometimes what happens is there's different compounds within the stone that fuse together under heat. Sometimes the crystals become realigned in other materials. Sometimes water gets attached to the chemical composition within the material and causes it to be more knappable. Okay, there's various different reactions that happen within various stones that cause it to be more knappable. So one explanation is not going to cover all. Okay? And even within the same stone, it affects the different parts of the stone in different ways sometimes. Like the closer you get to the cortex, the more fine-grained it gets in some cases, so that might heat treat well, but in the middle it's not so good, or vice versa. Maybe it destroys the outside of the stone, but in the middle, that is more heat treatable than the other parts of the stone. And it could vary along different planes of layering, and that could vary a lot, so you have to experiment with your particular batch. Is there a chart for different heats and stuff? Yes, but I would recommend just keeping in mind that 400 degrees. But start at 350, or maybe even 300. Yeah, start at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat it for an hour if it's flakes. 1/4 inch adds another hour, and so on. And then let it cool down for 12 hours before you take it out of the oven or the kiln or whatever. Test it. If it's the same, put it back in and then your final temperature will be 50 degrees hotter, for example, 350 degrees. Same process, you know, you heat it for an hour if it's a 1/4 inch thick flake. Let it cool down for 12 hours, take it out, chip it. If does it work? No. Put it back in, raise the heat up to 400 an hour. Let it cool for 12 hours. Take it out, chip it. Ooh, it's more glossy and it looks pretty good, but it's still not glass-like. Maybe it can be better. Okay, put it back in. 450. Take it out. Uh-oh, it cracked and it popped and stuff. Dang it. Now you know. 400 is it. But that could happen at 350 degrees, where at 350 it naps pretty good. Or even at 300, the first temperature you try, it naps really good. Sometimes it doesn't nap at all and it doesn't do anything until you're up at 500 degrees and then finally, hey, it's starting to gloss up and it can be napped. Wow, 500. That's about the limit of the do-it-yourself without a kiln type heat treating. Now, do-it-yourself also it can also involve natural fires or a barbecue grill. Okay. I usually don't heat treat that way, but I have heat treated it that way, but with mixed results. To get 600 degrees or more with a natural fire is dicey. It can be done, it's easily done, but the temperature variation and the warm up and cool down is very drastic in some cases, especially like a day like today where it's windy. 1 minute it could be 650, the next minute 750 because a breeze is blowing into the fire, and then the breeze stops and it goes back down really quick, back down to 600. And then you're feeding the fire again and it goes down to 550 and then it blazes back up to 700 degrees. That kind of thing. You have to be very patient with the heat and the fires with a natural fire. And in this case, what I'm talking about is burying it under the fire, burying the flakes under the fire with a couple inches of ash or dirt or sand or all three, just as long as the fire's not touching the flakes. I don't recommend more than a couple inches. In fact, last time I did it had a pretty good success was with only like a 1-inch layer. And this was ash, dirt, and sand all mixed together, and little bits of charcoal and stuff. It worked okay, but I couldn't tell which flakes were heated hotter than other flakes, so it was just a hit or miss. You know, some of it napped well, some of it didn't. But that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking right now. Now, I have heat-treated flakes around the fire exposed to the air, and then tested with my hands the heat, and I have a little heat sensor gun too that I've tested. I can heat treat flakes around the fire and monitor the heat of the fire much easier than if I bury it. Okay? And using my hands, or you can also use little pieces of meat or whatever you're cooking around the fire as a way to monitor the heat. Okay? And I've been promising to demonstrate that. I just haven't done it because of the weather here. Yeah. I need to build a lodge back there. Yeah. That way I can have a little enclosure with no wind going anywhere, and I can build a little fire in there. It's not going to catch the whole thing. This is not... I can't have a fire in that thing because it's plastic, and who knows what will happen to that. Yeah, I need to build a little lodge and do it. How did I do it? I did it when I was living in Texas because at that property I have a metal cover, an area that's covered by a metal roof with a concrete slab. I can do that kind of stuff there with one of those pans that contain coals, right? One of those backyard campfire things that contains the materials, and then you put this screened cover over the top. Yeah. I've done it in one of those. It works in one of those. Why don't I do that here? Because, like I said, the weather, I never know when the weather's going to be good enough. And the neighbors don't like it. I've already tested. I've tested to see how they like me doing little campfires back here, and they don't like it. Okay, fine. I'll deal with it and overcome. All right, back to this. Clear glass is not something I recommend. Yeah, not clear glass. The darker the better. I could go on and on about heat treatment, but I'm going to change the subject. Clear glass is not something I recommend. It's hazardous because you can't see it. It's usually tempered in a weird way so that it naps in a weird way. I say tempered in a weird way. Tempered just means that they've altered the glass to be stronger for whatever purpose. And there's a spectrum or a range of tempering. Just like there's a range of tempering for metals, there's a range of tempering for glass. Not all of it breaks into little blocky chunks. Tempered glass is on a spectrum. Okay, the least tempered glass is going to be the best. But bottle glass is in the middle somewhere. Okay. Quartz crystal is nappable. Quartz crystal. Some people can get those cheap or in bulk. You can nap quartz crystals, and it does have planes of fracture, but they're not too bad. Okay? Basalt is a mixed bag. Make sure you get the fine grain variety, and the only way you know is if you test it. Most basalt is terrible for napping. Rhyolite will torture you. You sometimes hear that it can be napped using wood billets. Yes, it's true, but not for fine work. It's good for spalling and bifacing. The wood is good for spalling and bifacing. The real napping should be done with copper or steel, and that real is in quotes. Okay, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, that's the real stuff. When you're trying to thin it down without step fracturing it, that's the real napping. That's what frustrates everybody. That's what they want to know how to do. You don't want to use wood or antler on rhyolite in that case. I mean, some people insist on using it, especially for antler or bone on that. Fine, you know, go ahead, knock yourself out. But it tortured me when I did that. But yeah, some people are sitting on tons of rhyolite that is good to nap. And yeah, go ahead and knock yourself out. You want to use wood, want to use antlers and bones, that's fine. Some rhyolite is fine-grained, but it's very rare. Yeah, I think it's very rare. Some people don't. They think, yeah, there's a ton of it. Yeah, maybe where you are. Just like amoeba chert in Texas. Well, there's a ton of it. Yeah, maybe where you are, but hardly any of us get to use it. All right. Collecting rock. Always test rocks. Yeah, road cuts sometimes provide the source for exposed rock that's nappable, but it's usually going to be cracked and stuff. And it's usually picked over by other people. Rivers and gravel beds are good places as long as you can travel there without trespassing. Many rivers and waterways are public by law, but as soon as you exit the boat and stand on dry ground, you may be trespassing. Google Maps may be used to spot areas with lots of gravel. This is not a very reliable method, but I have seen people use the method with some success. Yeah, especially rock hounds. So if you found it on Google Maps, chances are there's already been a rock hound that knows about flint that's also found it before you. So just be aware that when you go there, you're going to go, dang, I got a geological survey of this whole area and it says it's full of chert, but I go to this gravel bed and all I find is little flakes. Yeah, that should tell you that someone's been testing it and took all that stuff out of there. All the good stuff. Okay? In general, besides nap-ins, the best place to find rocks is landscape supply yards. Yeah, okay. It's getting repetitive. Okay, heat treat, always experiment. Always install an external temperature gauge on your DIY setup. Now, if you're doing it in your kitchen, you don't need a temperature gauge because the oven has a pretty good temperature gauge. Sometimes you'll get strange smells if you heat treat in an oven in the house. Most of the time, that doesn't matter because it's just earth smells, dirt, you know, bacteria and stuff. Yeah, there's bacteria inside or around or on stone. and stuff, and there's like organic compounds on the surface or within the top layers of cortex or whatever that start to smell funny. Or sometimes there's outgassing of certain chemicals within the stone, and you can kind of detect that because it'll smell like an electrical smell or some kind of industrial smell. If you smell something that's industrial like or something like that, make sure you open the windows and get ventilation. I don't know how dangerous that is, but I wouldn't want to breathe it, so I recommend just ventilating the kitchen. If you smell something that is industrial, like I would tend to call it. I don't know what else to call it. Chemical smell? I don't know. What's a chemical smell? I don't know. Let's see. I already said no, you don't need sand enough times. All right, so almost an hour. I've been speaking for almost an hour. All right, last but not least, I'm going to go over something called, or what I call, Flintknapping derangement syndrome. Okay, I think we all know people that have Flintknapping derangement syndrome, but let me just go over this a little bit in the short time we have before it reaches 1 hour exactly. Okay, let's compare cooking to Flintknapping. Let's say I'm doing some cooking or I make my soup. Okay, and imagine someone saying, it's hilarious when people think they're cooking when the food isn't tasty. Yeah, they think they're cooking, but the food isn't tasty or doesn't have good ingredients, or they're not doing it well. They're kind of spilling it. They spill the stuff everywhere. They're not chopping it right. It's hilarious. Maybe you do get comments like that in the comment section of a cooking video, but I don't see very many. And if you do, you automatically know that they've got some kind of derangement going on, because everyone is human, right? I mean, you don't have to be perfect in your cooking. Yeah, you can make fun of them and mock them and stuff, but if it's genuine attempt to cook something, there's no reason to mock them at all. Okay? Another thing to compare is, I'm going to use cooking for all these comparisons, okay? Some people might ask, why is it so hard to know how they cooked, let's say, fish back in the day, back in the past, 5,000 years ago? Why is it so hard for us to know that? People ask that about Flintknapping, but when you ask that about cooking, people think you're nuts. Of course you don't know how they did it in the past, because there's 100 ways to cook fish. Yeah, they cooked it. Yeah, what's so hard about it? About knowing that they put it over a fire or whatever, but there's many different ways to cook them. You can marinate it. You can dry it first. You can cook it fresh. You can gut it or not gut it. You can take the scales off or not take the scales off. You can cook it with the bones or without the bones. You can make special preparations so the bones get soft. You can take all the bones out. Same with Flintknapping. There's many different ways to do the same exact thing. Like cooking fish, let's say that it has no bones, it's a fillet, it has no spices, and it looks identical on 5 different plates. Are they all cooked in the same way? No, there's many ways that you can achieve that same looking dish with the same flavor. Starts with different heat and ends with different heat. As an example, I'm not an expert at cooking fish, but you get the idea. There are many different ways to achieve the same result with all these pieces of fish. So how do we know how they used to do it, those pieces of fish back in the day? We don't. Same with Flintknapping. But people ask, how is it so hard to know how they did it? Just think about it in terms of cooking, let's say. All right? They might also ask stuff like, why aren't we using the same tools for cooking as they used 5,000 years ago. I mean, if you're going to make a traditional dish, you know, use clay pots that you made yourself and wooden spoons you made yourself, and make sure the wood is right. Like, it has to be the correct tree. And the spoons have to be the right size and a special type. Can't be angled in a weird way. People don't get that way when it comes to something like cooking, because they'll just be laughed out of the comment section. But in Flintknapping, you get those. I don't know what it is. I think it might be because the community is so small. Yeah. That, you know, there isn't a whole lot of pushback because there isn't a whole lot of people doing it. But yeah, we need to push back on this kind of stuff. All right? Because it's ridiculous. It really is. All these questions, and you can see it's ridiculous by comparing it to something like cooking, but it can apply to basket making, pottery, warfare, every topic you can imagine, same thing. Now, yeah, you're going to get people that are going to say, well, to be a purist, you got to do yada, yada, yada. Yeah. Are those people pursuing truth, or they're just confused? What is it? I think they just want to obtain some sort of moral high ground. Yeah. For the most part. Now, some of them are looking for truth, and they're poking you to see what you'll do. Maybe you'll investigate it further. That's fine. But I just wanted to go over that, because the way I see it, when someone asks a question like, why can't we figure out how they do it? Just compare it to, I have to compare it to something else. You know, why can't we figure it out? Well, we can't figure out how they cooked fish back in the day, as an example. We can't figure out exactly how they made their baskets back in the day, just by looking at the baskets. We don't know how they prepared their pigments back in the day. There's various ways to prepare the same pigment. It's red, exactly the same, with the exact same chemical composition, but there are different ways to prepare it. So now, I know, there's different ways. Is that true of Flintknapping as well? Because some people will say, well, that's true of other things, but you're comparing apples to oranges. Okay, that's a valid point. But through my various attempts at using different tools and different methods with different materials under different circumstances, I have determined that there's at least 2 ways to make the same exact flake. It's taken me years, but I know that for a fact. So that's like saying this red pigment, there's at least two distinct ways to make the same exact pigment with the same exact chemical composition. So how do they make that pigment? We don't know. It's a 50-50 chance at best. Okay? That's how I think about it. Okay, I think I have finished that little rant. And we're going to be on to the next video. Besides, it's getting cold. The storm clouds have rolled in. The wind's picking up. It's probably going to rain on me here in a second. All right, there you go. That's it.